Hi, it's Govinda Singh 1984. I want to talk about parenting, responsibility, and it's about drugs. Now, there are parents, you could say, who are from middle class backgrounds. And not just middle class, upper class, or working class, it affects all the classes, whatever financial situation you may be in. And their parents are sitting there looking at pictures of their children when they're in primary school and remembering how joyful and how lovely they were as children. But that's all memories now because it all changed as soon as they turned into adolescence and they started rebelling as teenagers and they started experiencing and meddling with drugs. Now, as much as we can say to teenagers, don't do drugs, say no to drugs, the reality is so many teenagers are going to say yes to drugs. And it's not giving up, but I really think that it's a waste of time trying to get drugs off the street. We, as big brothers, as uncles, as fathers, mothers, sisters, aunties, we have a responsibility for the children. And an adult's responsibility is to protect children. So it's natural that you'd want to protect children from vices such as drugs and feel that if we remove drugs from the equation, the children will be safer. And that's just going to make them rebel even more. And I think it's more realistic that if we were to explain to children that there's a hell on this planet, a hell that 90% of teenagers are going to jump into out of their own choice. Now, if you were to imagine a fire, just a blazing fire, and within this fire you have the most glamorous women who are so sexy. You have endless amounts of alcohol, endless amounts of cannabis, endless amounts of heroin, endless amounts of cocaine. You have gambling, racehorses. So there's all these vices in this fire, and hell is made to look so glamorous. It's made to look so in. Like, if you have any experience with gambling, it's not glamorous at all. The problem with gambling is such a shitty way to live. But when you see these endless advertisements on TV and these celebrities, gambling has been glamorized. So you have sexy women laying on their bed, rolling about with their phones in their hand with the latest betting app, and it entices people to think this is something good because beautiful women are promoting it. But the reality is, it's far from glamorous. So teenagers tend to jump into this fire head first. Now, there's no way of avoiding this fire. This hell is going to be something that all new parents who have toddlers or primary school aged children, I'm sure they're anxious and they're worried about how could things turn out when they reach adolescence. What's the possibility of them getting in trouble and start meddling in drugs? And there's a very high risk, a very high possibility. And so we would try to stir the children around the fire and get them away from the fire, but that isn't always going to work. And sadly, when we jump into this fire, some of us who may be lucky may come out on the other end of the fire. Some people are going to sadly die in the fire, and some people are going to walk around the fire. The clever people, the smart people are going to look at all the mistakes that older generations made and decide not to make the same mistake, and they're going to walk around the fire. Now, all we can do as people who've experienced drug problems, who've experienced alcoholism or gambling, when we come clean, when we're clean for 10 years and we don't meddle in gambling or alcohol or cannabis or heroin, whatever the personal demon may have been, all we can do is sit on the other side of the fire with our hands out, ready to pour out of the fire any hand that reaches out for help, and give them advice, comfort them, and let them know it didn't work out. And it wasn't going to work out, because in this fire there's no happy ending. It will, as glamorous as it may seem at the start, it will always have a unhappy ending. And unfortunately, sadly, there are going to be people who aren't going to make it out of the fire. They'll either die from binge drinking, they might die from suicide. It's very serious, and sadly there are going to be people who are going to die. And I dread to think that when I look at my nephew and niece or my cousin brothers, that when they get to their teenage years and the peer pressure and that environment, something that they're going to be exposed to, that, you know, they could throw their whole lives away just to act and look cool. And as much as we who've experienced it try to tell them and share our experiences of what we did, a lot of them are going to learn the hard way, because if you play with fire, you are going to get burnt. You play with fire, you will get burnt. And so we can only sit on the other side of the fire and reach out our hands to those who reach out their hands to us for help. And once we pull them out of the fire and we sit them, we pat them down, and all we can say to them is like, yeah, you'll have atheists, people who aren't religious whatsoever, but they've experienced a crisis, and the crisis is either going to bring you closer to God or make you lose complete faith in God. Now, we need to try to give them hope and keep their faith in God alive, to explain to them that this crisis can be turned, this negative can be turned into a positive if you now focus your consciousness and whereas before you gained a temporary satisfaction from getting high, from an usher, from being drunk or being high off drugs, now it's time to leave that behind, never return to it whatsoever, and gain satisfaction from spiritual development, spiritual engineering within self-knowledge, self-realization, and gaining satisfaction and a blissful feeling just through meditation and prayer, because that's what it's come to. And so for some people, sadly, they are going to have to learn the hard way and make those mistakes just so they come out on the other end of the fire with faith in God, and faith in God bringing them out of the fire. And so it could be turned into a positive. Now the thing is, when you come out of the fire and you've got mental health problems, whether it's bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, if you continue to drink, if drink was your downfall, if you continue to smoke cannabis, if cannabis was your downfall, if you continue to do heroin, if heroin was your downfall, it is only going to make things worse, and you'll be stuck in that fire. When you have had enough and your life has come to a complete standstill, when you nearly lost all your family members, when you lost all your friends, you lost your job, and it's just you on your own, you have to make that choice and say, enough is enough. It didn't work out for me, Some people are having their times of their lives in hell, drinking all sorts and smoking all sorts. But I've been burnt. I'm done. I want out. And this is where you can start doing exercise, going for an hour's walk a day, listening to music that you would never listen to before, ambient music, healing music, reading books of all sorts, writing your own book, writing a story. This is where you can start developing your inner self, and it can be turned into a positive. Whereas if you have crawled out of the fire and you're just there on your own and there's no one there to help you, it will get worse, and you will start escaping and numbing the depression with some sort of substance such as narcotics. And you just have faith that there are people who've been through what you're going through, what you experience, and when you come to their attention, they'll give you advice, they'll comfort you, and they'll cushion your fall. People that are judgmental tend to be the ones that look down on people and think, oh, look at him, he did this, or she did this, or she's been doing this, she used to do this. They will always be judgmental people. But the ones who won't judge you are the ones that have experienced the crisis, who've walked through the hell. Now, all we can try to tell children is when you're 15, 16 years old, all you need to be worried about is getting your qualifications, going to college or university if academics is your thing. But even if academics isn't your thing, you don't really want to pursue the education route, you can move out of this hell just by working. If you don't mess up your credit, if you don't go to those payday loan companies that will give you payday loans or things like that, don't mess up your credit. And if you just worked for 3 years straight and dedicated yourself to 3 years of just grafting, and you save 40 grand. Now 40 grand isn't an impossible figure to reach, because if you were to add up all the money you spent on cigarettes, that's easily tens of grands over a couple of years. So if you were to just work, whether it was driving a bus part-time, whether it's a courier driver, whether it is a sports coach, if you were just to bang it out for 3 years and discipline yourself and say, look, I'm going to go out once every 2 weeks, I'm going to go to the club once every 2 weeks, I'm not going to go every Friday and every Saturday throughout the whole month, I'm going to go once every 2 weeks just to let down, have a rave, have a dance and unwind, go for it. And if you were to save 40 grand, you can go to the bank and show them your wage slips from the past 6 months or a year or however much they ask for, and say, I would put 40 grand deposit on a 5-bedroom house and I would like to take out a mortgage for 200 grand. And if all is well, there shouldn't be no reason to why you shouldn't get that mortgage. And once you get that 200 grand in your bank account, you can do up the house, you can buy that car you always wanted, you can go and travel the world, and you can stay away from the fire. That should be your only priority, your only goal as a 17, 18 year old. Once you've got that deposit for the house, then you can go and live a little. It's going to take dedication, but now you can relax. And, you know, you can travel the world. While you travel the world, you can put your house on rent and let it pay itself and come back. Whereas if you live in the fast life as a 15, 16 year old and you're like, I just want to travel, work, get your wages, travel, work, get your wages, travel, you're going to come back home to nothing. Whereas if you sacrifice 3 years to save 40, 50 grand to put a deposit on a house and you get a 200 grand mortgage, you can travel and come home to your own home. You need that responsibility, you need that stability. Now, I'm only giving advice because this is what I would have done if I didn't become mentally unwell. this is something I can work towards now, and hopefully that I can achieve a deposit for a house through a career in music. That's my goal. That's what I'm hoping. But this is what people need to be focused on. And so you need to stay away from that fire, because that fire can drag you down. You may be lucky enough to get out of the fire of hell, or you may die in hell. And you don't want that. So I just wanted to give some advice, and I just wanted to share my wisdoms, and I hope it helps people. And please share this so we can raise awareness and reach the kids. Just stay away from the fire. But it's going to be in one ear, out the other for a lot of people. Are going to jump into the fire. And so, yeah, that's it. And that's it. There was something I wanted to say. I'm just trying to remember. Give me a sec. No, I don't think I remember. Yeah, so just work hard and you can get that mortgage for that house. And the only thing is, I would say, is if you are doing it alone, it'll take longer. But if you find a soul companion, a soulmate, you can do it together. You can work with your partner to work for a deposit for a house. The only thing with that is, if you ever split up and then you go through the whole the drama of who shares this or what belongs to who and things like that. But you know, my best advice is, before I started listening to gangster rap as a teenager, I used to listen to R&B. I used to listen to Jodeci. I used to listen to TLC. They were my favourite growing up. And I was a romantic. I really believed that, you know, you treat women with respect, you sing them love songs, you love women. But when you listen to gangster rap, you don't learn from gangster rap how to treat women. Don't ever listen to gangster rap for how to treat women. Listen to R&B, listen to Motown, listen to love songs, romantic songs, and treat women with respect. Don't take them for granted. Now, if you find your soul companion and work together for that deposit for a house, and once you get that deposit for a house and you get that mortgage for 200 grand, 250 grand, bring a child into the world. That's what you need to be focusing on, yeah? So yeah, go for it, yeah? And just remember, sadly, not everyone wants you to succeed. Not everyone wants you to be able to go and achieve this thing, because if everyone went out there and did exactly everything I just said, there'll be more competition, more properties will be scarce, and people will be, you know, fighting to get the best deal. So there's people out there who genuinely want you to succeed, and there's people who want you to fail. Sadly, that's just a fact of life. Peace. Namah Shivaya.